I knew that Dwayne was a genius since 1975. How did I know that? Back then, there was a news report about some little kid, like a 10-year-old kid, who was going off to college. Now, that is not all that uncommon. Sometimes they bring in little kids to go to college, but in 1975, it was like, this is uncommon because it's an African-American kid. So I'm watching it, and there's a skinny little kid with glasses, and looks really nervous, and for some reason, I didn't forget that. Years and years later, I met Dwayne, and after we get to know him, he mentioned that he had started Michigan at, at 10 or 12. And I said, wait a minute, that was you I saw on television. And he got so embarrassed, didn't want to talk about it.
I met Dwayne in high school, but it was all in passing. We were, it was a small high school. Occasionally I'd go into a lounge and there'd be people talking and he'd be one of the people. In fact, he'd be one of the people holding court. He was very much like the Dwayne that we know. One large difference is he was on the basketball team in high school and was a very athletic person when I met him. He actually would downplay that because I think, and probably rightly so, he felt that showing athletic ability made people think less of him intellectually.
He had wanted to be an astronaut. This is the reason he studied physics as a little boy. Other kids would say, oh, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a fireman. Every little boy says that, but he really wanted to be an astronaut and was devastated that he grew too tall. That's sort of his lifelong dream he didn't get to do. He wanted to be an astronaut.
There was so much about Dwayne that we did not know that has now come to light. I knew he was a genius. I didn't know how incredible a genius he was on so many levels.
He was a brilliant physicist. Pretty much everything I know about science I learned from Dwayne. He went to the bookstore every week, bought several books, read them all, like stacks of books.
All these different subjects, and I walk out with my little art book, ding, ding, ding.
He and I had a lot of conversations over breakfast about writing. I miss it. It's like taking a master's class every morning.
Well, he's a gifted kid. I mean, his mom, I think, picked up on that really early. And as I said, if you're 10 years old and you're starting college, you've had an extremely unusual childhood. There's no way around that.
His father would take him to the bookstore at a very early age. He would say, here's a $20 bill. You can buy whatever you want.
Dwayne would talk about having ridden his bicycle out of his neighborhood without his mom's permission to get to the comic book store. And then he got home and got in trouble because she found out. Somehow somebody ratted him out. He never found out. Like, he would ask, how did you know? He was always a comic book fan.
And I remember him telling me his mother was a doctor. His father was an engineer, I believe. So he grew up from a kind of wealthy household.
Dwayne had both an older and a younger brother. His older brother, Brian, died as an infant. So essentially it was Dwayne and his younger brother, Daryl, growing up, and they were inseparable.
His life is so varied and interesting, and you only get, I think every person except maybe Charlotte and Matt only get little bits and pieces. I almost feel like I'll never know the truth. I'll never know every piece.
Dwayne used to sell jokes to David Letterman when he was younger in New York.
Which I found out later, much later, as I find out everything about Dwayne.
He was really versatile. He could do straight drama, he could do crazy comedy, and everything in between.
This is not something that he walked around broadcasting. I mean, the guy's a super genius. It's incredible.
He's such a larger-than-life character that it feels a little apocryphal.
He was such an extremely intelligent man who knew so much and hungered for more, and so much hungered for acceptance, and acceptance of who he was and what he was trying to accomplish.
Any African American you see, if they're a writer or if they're an actor or whatever,
just know that they went through a whole lot to get there. You know, just know that they probably went through 3 times as much as anybody else. So if occasionally some stuff seeps out, you know where it's coming from.
My first meeting with him was over Damage Control. I was an executive editor at Marvel. We were both a lot younger, and he was a delightful, smart, wonderful guy who had come up with a terrific idea for Marvel.
I knew Damage Control a little bit, but I didn't know anything about him. And I met him literally, I think he walked into the room, and I just remember going, oh my God, this dude is like 6'5". And I remember, I was like 6'5" and didn't smile. So I'm like, wow, this is a guy after my own heart.
One thing that, you know, Dwayne was totally against was feeding into stereotypes. You know, he wanted to break the mold. He wanted to show that characters had depth, that there was a sense of humanity, that when you saw the character in certain situations that they would grow, that characters could have feet of clay. I think this is the core of what Dwayne's storytelling was about.
He originally avoided talking about race in his work. The first Deathlock miniseries was pure adventure. It was him having an African-American hero talking about mind versus body stuff. And then when the Deathlock series began, he then tried to do a typical Marvel thing to talk about race in Parable. And he did that with the Souls of Cyberfolk, which is, I think, everything that's wonderful about Dwayne is in there in some form or another. It's a really great read.
One of the best experiences with Dwayne was working with him, you know, and I got the chance to do it for years. You know, I was lucky. That collaboration with him is the thing I'm gonna miss so much.
He wanted to make sure that the world wasn't seen through one lens, and you had to be receptive to what Dwayne was trying to communicate to the world.
To see a black man do what he did is a door opener. You know, if you're like me, a black kid reading comic books, you're kind of a nerd. And we're not even part of the nerd world, you know?
It happened in San Diego Comic-Con, I'll never forget this. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, why don't we do a comic book company or a media company that focuses on black superheroes? And what Dwayne did was he exploded the idea. And that's how Milestone was born.
We sat down at this McDonald's one day and we conjured up these amazing characters. And Dwayne, not only would he come up with the character on the spot, he would come up with the backstory. It was really amazing.
It's hard to get artists to organize, to get freelance artists to organize, because the first thing you start thinking about is like, how's this going to affect my income? And if they see me associated with these people, maybe they'll fire us all. And then I'm asked out. Artists think like that. So it was hard to get everyone together.
The first finished piece of art that we got for Milestone Media, it was a Dennis Cowan picture of Icon and Rocket sitting on a rooftop. We just put it up against a wall, and we just stared at it grinning for an hour, and the rest of the day we would just look at it and say, my God, we're really doing this.
We had a number of cheerleaders at DC. It was definitely Paul. You know, he was the one that I originally walked into DC on a Friday afternoon about 3:30. I'll never forget this. And it was during the summer months, I think, so they were closing early. But whatever it is, I was in Paul's office, and I was up there all the time. It wasn't like a not normal thing for me to be there. But this time I had a purpose, and that was to give Paul the Bible that we had come up with, that Dwayne had written. So he was the first one to actually hold a milestone document to even know what we were talking about, because I hadn't even mentioned it except at that time. Paul, we're doing a comic book company, it's gonna have black characters, blah, 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 blah. This is what we wanna do, here you go. You got the weekend to read it. He took it over the weekend and read it. And Tuesday, I think he called us and said, we need to talk. So Paul was an early supporter. He told Jeanette what we had done. We met with Jeanette, pitched her the idea. She signed on board, was very enthusiastic about it. But you know, they had to sell it to their bosses upstairs.
They were given space within DC, but to operate independently in DC to create a line of books that were really built around minority characters, not just African American, but a series of minority characters.
They knew Dwayne was brilliant. You know, they had faith in all of us. I had even at the time, a 20-year relationship with DC. So they knew me pretty well. But they recognized Dwayne's talents. The best way to exploit that is not to put any clamps on him.
Dwayne had the foresight to make sure that each title had a different tenor. Static had a little whimsy. Hardware was a bit darker. Icon tended to be more traditional, and Blood Syndicate was edgy. With each title, Dwayne had a different tenor, a different focus, and he wanted to make sure that sense of wonder in the Dakota universe was there.
Those first 4 characters are the ones that really caught my interest as a reader, and Icon and Rocket was probably one of my favorite comics during that period of time, because I think they established different paradigms. They broke a lot of rules.
For example, you know, if you saw Icon flying to the scene and he came to cops saw him, you know, would he be embraced the way Superman was embraced? No, there's an African-American male that comes on the scene, flies on the scene, and the first thing they're saying is, who are you? So Dwayne would have those little elements in there that would, you know, make the Milestone universe stand out and infuse a little reality as well as a little humor in the titles.
And those guys, when they set out to do Milestone, they knew they were breaking new ground. They knew they were doing something challenging. They were taking a shot at the status quo and took it really, really seriously.
When Dwayne created Static, they tied into the fact that this is about a guy, this is about a person, not about a skin color, not about a race.
Dwayne's experiences coming from Detroit, going to Roper, the University of Michigan, his experiences as a creator, his experiences as an African American who sometimes was misjudged or underestimated. I think all that came to his craft. I think all that came to Milestone and created this complex, multi-dimensional world, because Dwayne was complex and multi-dimensional.
Milestone was a huge adventure for both of us. For him, it was, I think, one of the most significant things he or anybody ever did in comics.
I remember seeing I think it was a kid at a convention dressed up as Static and saying, oh, isn't that great? You know, to have that effect on people must be great. And he said, you know what I'd really like to see is a white kid dressed up like Static. I want to get to a point where the characters are just characters and it's not about what color they are. They're just characters that you love and everything else is invisible.
Dwayne did something in Milestone to tell a more important story than just a superhero, than just that. That was what he was trying to say, what was inside of him and what he felt the readership the world didn't realize and accept.
I go back with Dwayne to the early 90s, like 93 or something like that. And the publisher of DC Comics at the time, when I was doing Batman the Animated Series, got me into a meeting in New York with the Milestone guys.
Alan Burnett loved the character Static, and he wanted to pitch it to Kids WB.
Alan had developed Static Shock and had said, you know what, here's this guy that you know, was one of the creators of the comic book. We should use him on the show as a writer. So I said, great, you know, I'll be his story editor, you know, and I'll do whatever rewrites are necessary. Once we got the go-ahead, the approvals to go to script, you know, I was the one who called him in Florida and told him, you know, okay, go for it. And he said, yeah, you know, this would be interesting. I've never done one of these before. And my face just fell. Oh my God, I'm working with an untried writer.
The script was supposed to be coming in, and I remember Stan Berkowitz suddenly at my door, and he's looking at me, sort of smiling. And I said, "What's up?" And he says, "It's in." And I said, "How is it?" And he just sort of smiled and nodded. And I read it, and it was beautiful. It was a script that would inform the whole rest of the series.
Static Shock, it was really fun because, I mean, it's a character that I knew from the comic books. And also, at the time, I think probably still is the only African-American teenage superhero.
You had this intelligent, wisecracking, you know, kid.
It didn't feel like you were doing a social piece. You know, it wasn't about the fact that he was a young black man from, no. He was a kid who was smart, who had these powers, and how he dealt with it.
He told me later, when he had moved out here, he said, you know, it only took me a couple of days to write that script. And I said, that's just amazing. And then I found out at his memorial that it just really took him only one day. His wife said he wrote that script in one day.
It was actually difficult to maintain a friendship with him as another working writer because you would be struggling through, you know, your 4 pages and he was doing 12 pages or 15 or 18 pages.
He had a lot of thoughts. He thought a lot faster than any of us. He was way ahead of everybody.
From that point on, every time his name came up, and it's like, yeah, let's use Dwayne, let's use Dwayne.
I remember hearing that Dwayne was going to be taking over Justice League, and I thought it was a great idea, obviously because of the work he did on the animated show. But Dwayne he was always a great professional who puts his heart and soul into everything he writes.
There was also a sense about Dwayne that I admired so of working together to produce something that everybody could be proud of, that I could be proud of directing, that the animation director would be proud of animating, that the actors could be proud of acting. He gave us the raw materials to do everything that we do, and it inspires everybody all along the line, like the domino theory. It's beautiful.
Up until that point, it was always kind of like a necessary evil when you'd have to sit down, you know, every week or every 2 weeks, you'd have to go to the writer's room and go, okay, now we need to come up with a new story. And sometimes it's a chore. Sometimes it's like, oh, okay, God, we just finished this other show. Now we got to come up with a whole new story from scratch, you know, and how, you know, what do we do? When we were working with Dwayne, it got to the point where I actually couldn't wait to actually get in the writer's room with Dwayne and the other writers and with James and just start throwing crazy ideas out.
In a way, was kind of a juggler. You could see him processing the characters, what any story change would affect the character. From that thing, how to make the story stronger, and you could see he was seeing the story visually. Because that's one of his strengths as well. Most writers, when they write, they're not thinking that there's an artist that's going to be drawing this. But Dwayne saw that, and his scripts are very visual.
The dynamic was just sitting and kicking around a story until we were ready, and then just going through it, walking through it. That was incredibly comfortable. I don't know that it's been that comfortable since.
I loved working with him when we did Ben 10, which was just a terrific experience for us. There was always this camaraderie I felt with him, that we were playing on the same team, working toward the same goal, which was to, on everything we worked on, create a theatrical experience that was believable.
Every child, within a certain age range on the planet, knows Ben 10. And
Alan Burnett spoke very highly of Dwayne. The best analogy that I can use for Dwayne for story writing or storytelling is he was like a storytelling GPS. He tells you, okay, we're going to do the story, now we're going to turn right here, now we're going to turn left here.
One of his big keys to storytelling was, if you've got a great idea, use it. Don't save it for a later occasion, because you will always come up with another great idea.
he thought if you were going to do message-based programming, educational programming, you can put it in a documentary on a channel that nobody watches, and hit a couple hundred kids or whatever. But if you want to really get any kind of message across, you put it in the media that everybody's watching.
He had, a high bar for himself. He didn't automatically pat himself on the back. I think, if anything, he made us think a lot of what we were doing, how we can expand it, how to do it right. He told us character first, and then you layer. So you keep in mind, it's like, make him a character, make him interesting, and then layer on, the nationality. And if that is what serves to make him a better character, that's what's unique. That's, what will make this, hero stick around.
And it'll stay with them. I mean, you think of the things that stayed with us that, we watched for the first time as kids or read for the first time as kids. And then you later find out, oh, just because that's the first time I heard about it, that's not the first time that idea was in the world.
On one hand, it shows the people in the media towers that this is possible. That kid who doesn't look like everybody else in the bullpen could have something not only to offer your work, but that will make you money. And to the fan base, it shows you don't have to, go do stand-up or do graffiti. You can take those skills that you've got and do something else. He breaks down the barriers, just by existing.
Dwayne and I first met, we were introduced by mutual friends. It was a setup. My friend Eugene's son and his best friend Matt Wayne, who are also both animation writers, got it in their heads to fix us up.
I was good friends with Charlotte. We had met as we were both peers trying to make our way into writing, and so we broke it through the ranks together. And through the course of which time, over the course of a year, I would get chances to become friends with Matt Wayne and Dwayne McDuffie. The three of us would hang out, and we all became friends. But it was never the four of us together. Matt and I have sensed something. Matt sensed something there, that there was some sort of chemistry there, and we said, well, let's try to put them together.
I'm not a superhero comic book reader. I read comic books, but they were Richie Rich. I didn't know him or his work. He was just Matt Wayne's friend Dwayne. He was a nice guy.
The four of us did finally, have an occasion where we went to the same event together, the four of us.
And we hit it off immediately. Our first date, we went to lunch, and I figured I can go to lunch with anybody for an hour, right? We stayed there at the restaurant for 5 hours. They changed the whole restaurant around us for dinner, the lights and the staff was going off shift. And we didn't talk about work, and we didn't talk about comic books. We just talked about life and travel and things that we all had in common, to the point where I thought that Matt and Eugene had fed him information about me.
It really worked. And I don't think it's an exaggeration at all to call Charlotte the love of Dwayne's life. If you look at all the pictures that you'll find of Dwayne, you're going to see a very serious guy. He holds himself in a very serious way, and he doesn't smile, and he's telling you something intelligent. And all the pictures after he and Charlotte get together, he's smiling.
I mean, I'm so taken how happy he and Charlotte seemed. I met her with him before they were married, and I liked her. And she obviously gave him so much. And he her.
When we first talked about adapting All-Star Superman to one of our direct-to-video movies, I was a huge fan of the comic, but I literally could not figure out how we were going to take that massive 12-issue, maxi series and condense it down into a 70-minute story. And Dwayne goes, I think I got it. I think I. Figure it out. And again, super fast whiz kid that it was, I think he turned the outline in, less than a week later, and I'll be damned, he'd figured out exactly what to keep, what to throw out, and how to, connect the dots so that it did seem like a movie rather than a random series of events.
Grant Morrison is fantastic. I think what he did with All-Star Superman was this absolute love song to the Weisinger continuity. And I think Dwayne had the same love of that material.
I'm not sure I can ever watch the movie again without him. It was already sad enough with him. But the one scene that I just love and that gets me every single time is between Clark and his mom. And it's so simple and understated and genuine in terms of human emotion. I didn't know, because I hadn't read the All-Star Superman book, that wasn't originally in there. That's something Dwayne created, and that's the part that really resonated the most with me.
The comic book, the movies, the cartoons, how do you get that out of your head when you're actually writing?
It was a big deal, and that was the last week of his life.
Were you apprehensive about tackling it?
He really did end on a high point, including that debut of that show.
Afterwards, he was going to do a Green Lantern for me, and then he got picked up to do another 40 Ben 10s.
I wish the acknowledgement that he has gotten now, that he got more of that acknowledgement and more of that affection when he was alive.
The week before we went to New York for the premiere of All-Star Superman at the Paley Center, Samuel L. Jackson's people had contacted Dwayne, and he met with them, and they loved him. The next day, he was setting up meetings for him at Sony, and he was about to start writing features.
I was just telling Charlotte, there is not a day that goes by that I don't think about him. Literally not a day. His influence in my life has been personal and profound.
I ran into him outside of Cartoon Network right after I learned that a show that I was going to be the showrunner on, that I had been counting on for 6 months, fell apart. We talked, and I told him what had happened, and he just come with me. And we got into his giant SUV. It had to be an oversized SUV so that he can fit in it. And he just talked. And it showed a real emotional intelligence that I don't know if he'll get credit for.
I just kind of, just in the back of my head, just always thought, oh, Dwayne's always going to be there, and we'll eventually get to work together someday. And then, of course, boom, he was gone. And like I said, in retrospect, I do wish that I had taken more of an opportunity while he was still here to spend more time with him, just, you know, both on a professional and on a personal level.
That day that I went to the memorial at the Academy of Arts and Sciences and saw that audience, it was extremely heartwarming to see that he had touched all those lives. Sometimes you don't realize your impact. And what was heartwarming on that day was to see the fact that his mother was in the audience, and she saw what her son meant to the industry, what her son meant to fans.
I mean, I think Dwayne, like any artist, likes people to appreciate his work. The fans, certainly, but his peers. I told you earlier that something that meant so much to him was that when Bruce said that the best time of his life was in the writer's room on Justice League.
The sad part is that he had told me right, you know, fairly soon after I'd met him, no longevity for the men in his family. I mean, he kind of knew that.
Both of his brothers predeceased him. His brother, Daryl, died just 2 months before Dwayne. But Daryl looked up to his big brother, Dwayne, of course, but Dwayne was equally impressed with his brother, Daryl, and felt bad. That he had so many opportunities in life to go out and sort of pursue his dreams, and his brother didn't.
Imagine the mother. You know, both sons die within a year of each other.
People look at Dwayne's body of work and say, isn't this amazing? And I think, you know, you should have known what he wanted to do, you know?
You get the sense that there was all this unfinished work. And with Dwayne especially, again, things that I learned after the fact about just the breadth and depth of his body of work and his education and all this, you know, incredible facts about his life, you just get the sense that, wow, there was so much more he was ready to do.
He was even saying that that maybe he hadn't been aggressive enough in his career.
I honestly believe he did still feel that he didn't achieve the goals set for Milestone in the books themselves. That one of the reasons why he wanted to be personally involved in those books is because he wanted to maybe correct some of the mistakes they occurred along the way so they can achieve the goals that they set. And the main thing he wanted was those books to be successful.
He felt this story had not been told, that this depiction of a black man should be told. And he wanted acceptance of this in every way, and he fought it to be done.
You're not going to find somebody else like him. The best thing you could do, if you want to follow Dwayne's example, you know, is write about the stuff that you care about. Be true and honest with what you write about. If you want to carry on what he did, be like that.
I think that he would have been very happy if the world had changed for the better. Because of that, not just the talent, but because of the moral viewpoint, that is, I think, why we've lost so much.
He has legions of creators out there that he touched and that he mentored. I think the true legacy will be the fact that, you know, he told incredible stories. He brought humanity to, you know, writing in terms of entertainment. And he advocated the diversity of this industry.
Ben 10, writer Dwayne McDuffie dies. So Dwayne McDuffie passed away Monday. He was 49.
Hey, you guys, I just want to give my prayers, my thoughts out to Dwayne McDuffie and his family right now, you know, in their time of bereavement because McDuffie has died.
Hello, YouTubers. As of about a week ago, Dwayne McDuffie, writer and director of Ben 10, Alien Force, and Ultimate Alien, passed away. One of my friends told me that it was complications during heart surgery.
What is the deal with Dwayne McDuffie? Well, this is the man who allowed me to see myself, and I'm eternally grateful.
It's really a sad loss today in the comic book world. I mean, now when I'm looking at his resume, I'm like, wow, I really got to get into this industry because this man was unbelievable.
He spoke for us. He spoke for black people.
That's pretty much it. Dwayne McDuffie will be sincerely missed.
Rest in peace, McDuffie.